very warm welcome, dear ladies and gentlemen and friends of art. My name is Mira Hirtz. I am an artist, art historian and art mediator, and I'm very happy to present you this highlight tour on artworks which are presented in this year's Art Karlsruhe Digital Index. We will look at works ranging various media and also look into what galleries are at the moment innovatively coming up with in order to still exhibit work in times of the pandemic. The Art Karlsruhe Fair was founded 2004, and it was co-founded and is still being curated by Ewald Schrade and organized by Britta Wirtz. Classic, modern and contemporary art are included in what the art fair shows, so it spans a spectrum of around 120 years of art history. And every year, and that's usually taking place in February, the art fair shows around 190 galleries, and that then also includes one artist show, so where galleries can really exhibit one of the artists and put a focus on that. We also find museums of the region or of the city of Karlsruhe which are presenting their program and their current exhibitions. We also have, and we can see that here, a very spacious sculpture garden where very often we have a lot of large-scale sculptures being exhibited as well, though that also happens sometimes in the indoor space, so there can really be a focus on sculpture. And there's also a print and a graphic section. Now there's also an index of galleries and artists presented on the website, of which I will show you a selected few. And we will start with the German artist Stefanie Brehm. She is presented by the gallery Judith Andrea, and she won the Artima Prize this year. So she was meant to be exhibited with the ceramics and plastics that we see here in this year's art fair live. In this piece here, with the title Blue, Orange, Black, which is from last year, we can see immediately that Stefanie Brehm works in a very elaborate way with the balance of form and color. She was trained in ceramics before she then studied fine arts at the Academy in Munich. And there she also started to experiment with various materials, such as, for example, polyurethane, that's a kind of plastic, and also different forms of coloring, and she's also looking into glass. The colors are chosen very intuitively and in search for a balance and harmony, and dialogue with the shape, the size and also the feeling of the object that she has made. In an interview with the gallerist, Stefanie Brehm also said that she wants to transmit a kind of mood or an atmosphere, and through that actually a part of herself, that's what she wants to give to the visitor, to the viewer. And I found it quite interesting that can also be born out of, again, a dialogue with sound, because Stefanie Brehm feels like she can actually hear colors and different kinds of sound. So she uses music and also dance and movement in her creation process in her studio. Here we see an exhibition view of the European Center of Ceramics in the Netherlands. And she had a residency there and also studied there. And here in this view, we can also really see very well how space is being created as these different pieces and artworks are being put next to each other, how there are densities in between spaces and different kinds of relations that are being formed. And we're going to take this sense of space with us now in order to look at another, again, German artist called Franziska Schemel and her approach to painting. She is presented by the Gallery Knecht und Burster, which is at home here in Karlsruhe. And she's combining painting and photography. So we can see here on this painting titled Coffee to Go, something that's quite characteristic for her work at the moment, which is that there's a small scale photography quite in the center, and then we have a larger scale painted panel around that. And because it's in the center, our gaze is kind of focused there, and it's almost a bit like a window that we look through, a window that is opening up in this painting itself. Something we can also see here is that she often uses photographies of underground urban spaces. So she goes through underground stations and other transitory spaces and takes photos there. And she uses these kind of uncanny, a bit artificial feeling spaces in order to also reflect on our routines of navigating, of traveling, also of perceiving urban space and urban architecture, even especially the one that's in underground systems of the cities. And it's by that kind of a language that we are very much familiar with, also like the title Coffee to Go. It's something that we can read immediately. What we can see here also really well in Inside Outside is that she then puts, and here it's really very central, this window, so to say, that she then elongates it with the lines of perspective. So almost like the window leads a bit into something that we cannot really follow anymore. Though it's not only uncanny, we see here in this example also very well that there's a play with light, also with brightness, and that we could almost see that some kind of imaginary scenes are being shown here. There's a materiality to the walls that we are looking at right now. There's this abstraction of human beings walking there, but there's also this bright sky and this bright pathway, and maybe that's almost like a fantasy moment of relating to these kind of urban spaces. If you're interested in that, Franziska Schemel's work is also currently exhibited in the gallery, and that also includes publication of a catalogue. Yes, and we continue with the sense of spatial moment to look here at landscape painting of Franz Politzer, painting with oil. And it has the title Der geteilte Wald, or in English you could say the divided forest. Franz Politzer is being presented by the gallery Forum Kunst Contemporary from Austria. And yes, we do look at landscape, but also as a title of the gallery, a title of an exhibition of the gallery has suggested, we actually look at landscape as a stage. So similar to the work we've just seen from Franziska Schemel, he's also working with flatness and depth and puts that next to each other. But the things are more falling apart also here. The elements in themselves seem to be broken apart or divided, how the title tells us here. They also feel quite uncanny because there's often a lack of shadow, and we have this set design feeling somehow, where this part of a set or of an architecture stands almost like a part of the landscape, but then also like a monument in the landscape suddenly in this painting. So things are being mirrored, things are being floating in the air. So it sometimes feels a bit like these images maybe come from dreams or from the subconscious, or also from a very subjective perception of nature and landscape. And maybe we could also say that Franz Politzer would like us to get to have almost like a fresh, like a new view on the landscapes that are surrounding us, by giving us this a bit of a fantastic approach to it again, or an imaginative approach to it again. And also here we have a little bit the sense of a window, as if we could look through the stage design into something else. Though here it's not so really clear also, is one more real than the other one, or is one more or less fantastic than the other one. To shift a little bit to a different kind of dealing with space, I would like to look at Stefan Heyer, presented by the DBCA Gallery. And here we can take a look at a little video of a hanging right now, actually, of the gallery in Düsseldorf, which also allows us to see how these works can be perceived in space, allows us to see a little bit of the size. And a lot of galleries are at the moment still, even though they can't always open, but having exhibitions going on. So also keep an eye open, because maybe there's actually a chance to book a slot and go and see something, because that's obviously a very different approach to us looking at it here online. Stefan Heyer also combines photography and painting, and I would like to look at one of these paintings. This one here called Awaken the Spirits. Actually, I would like to show you a detail first, where we can see the use of photography a little bit here. So he uses photo transfer in order to bring those on canvas. He often chooses photographies of architecture also, with modernist or brutalist style, and then brings these elements, and I'm gonna go back to the whole view, brings these elements together through his use of oil and pastel oils. So we can see here being brought into relation. We could also almost say being brought into movement, or a kind of momentum. It seems almost like it's not only about space here, but really also about time, about the gesture of the painting. We can also very much see the background of the canvas still, which leads to that we have a feeling of this moment of action, of painting. I'm gonna go forward again, so you can see really here the very spontaneous looking like marks, and also the layering of the different kinds of oils. What I also find interesting here is that different to a lot of other artists that I'm talking about today here, Stefan Heyer has not been trained academically in art, but he is self-trained, and was training himself until he found to that kind of style that we can see in the painting here. From here, I would like to look a little bit deeper into photography, and also into a personal dialogue, again with urban space, with the city. But here it's a very particular city, and not only that, it's a war zone, was a war zone, and it's about the artist Faha al-Salih, who now lives in Karlsruhe, was born in Iraq, and grew up in Kuwait, where there was no art education available, or possibility to engage in any kind of training in art. But as an adult, then he fully embraced this practice. What he is known for, and we will see a glance of that in a little bit, is actually more his mosaic paintings that he makes out of industrial sponges. For this series here, which is called Baghdad Blues, he has been using photography. He's done that because on his last trip to Baghdad, which is the hometown of his father, he was shocked by what he witnessed, the suffering of a city that has been in war for such a long time and surrounded by it. Also often just the loss of shelter, the loss of homes. What we see on the series are often indoor rooms and very everyday like scenes, where there is though this kind of insecurity of questioning what is a home, or maybe also we can say the German term Heimat here is a useful thing. The questioning of what home and Heimat means, we can feel that a bit in those scenes. And for him, this communication with the people that he met, if in direct talking or just being with them, was very important, trying to capture this mood of the blues that's in the title of Baghdad Blues, and also in order to give us images which are maybe different to the ones that we are used to in news and media if we hear about war zones. So thereby he really invites us to reflect on home, on Heimat as a construct, and also brings up the topics of shelter as something that we take for granted, but that is maybe not for everybody. And these ideas, we could maybe say, are as layered as what we see, as what we look here now. This work Noha 1, where he used photography on acrylic glass, brass plate, and wood as so different surfaces to work on. And we have this glimpse into a room and a person, but it's somehow also blurred and filtered through this red kind of square that we see here, and also put into relation, into reflection with the shiny surface in the background, or just the shiny surface, and also the writing next to it. Faha Al-Salih is being presented by the Gallery Yvonne Hohner Contemporary, and also in cooperation with the Gallery Filze and Gräf in Munich. And Filze and Gräf has made Baghdad Blues into a virtual exhibition, and I would like to show you a part of that. So I made a little video of that, so you can see I can navigate here with the arrows. I can click on an artwork, which will bring me closer and see some infos. And actually a lot of galleries are, as I mentioned a bit in the beginning, coming up with these kind of virtual exhibitions as a tool to give us still the feeling that we have the choice of where we want to go, how we want to go, what we want to look at, that we have at least a proposition of how it would be to see a series like that in a space. And these virtual exhibitions do often work or function very differently. And here we see the promised short glimpse of the mosaic painting, and then we go back to Noha 1 that we have been looking at before. I did copy paste here the link, that's this one, to this virtual exhibition, and below is a link to another virtual exhibition of Filze and Gräf, which is about their art fair booth. So if you would like to have a look at that, you can just pause the video for a moment and then copy them and copy paste them and have a look. Let's make a little bit of a jump, though we also in a way come back to the sense of landscape through looking at the work of Ruth Gamper, an Italian artist presented by the Italian Wesso Art Gallery. And Ruth Gamper, what's really interesting here is that she is always working with different kind of recycled materials, and she has chosen that kind of technique and medium already in a time when ecological crisis wasn't as present as it is in today's public discussions, or also in the discussions in the art world and the use of materials. And she's done a whole series where she's used old maps, and this is one of the examples that we can see here. So maps which are then being transformed, of course, from the original context, being layered, being collaged together. So we can still see this immense richness of detail, the many lines, the names, the routes signifying places and ways to go, which are of course then still somehow signs of those and for those places and routes. But in a way they are also become more like an object themselves. These maps become, or these collaged maps, put together maps, become a bit more like an object itself, because some of the names we can't read them anymore. The routes don't really lead anymore. Things are being turned around. Also, all these shadings of height and depth are being put together in another way, as it seems like here. It's almost a bit looks like a painting through that, or a drawing. So it's a little bit like the map that we look at here is more like a trace maybe than a cartographic medium. Or we could say it's like a surface that holds many folded spaces or that contains many worlds. And of course, also today with Google Maps, an analog map is actually a little bit of a nostalgic object. So also that is probably a little bit present here in this work. Map and landscape-like are also the works, often at least, by Claudie Jongstra, and we are looking at one of them, presented by the Dutch Gallery Fontana. And Claudie Jongstra works with wool, and she uses very different kinds of wool. And what she also does is that she dyes them herself naturally. I'm going to show you a detail so you can see the use of wool and also a bit closer these colors. For example, here she used dyes such as indigo, weld, walnut, and sage. And I'm gonna go back. So she creates these like large-scale wall pieces, like we see one here. She also creates installations which are also covering the floor. Works with architecture in that way, and she actually also works with fashion and textile design. One really important thing for her is also really that she doesn't only look at what are the different colors, how can she dye them in a natural way, but also where comes the wool from. So for example, she's holding sheep in order to produce the wool, but also further than that, she engages with local producers, with local schools and farmers. So it's really about making a sustainable chain for her artworks, but also for her fashion and architectural pieces. And here we can again see really how these different kinds of textures also creating this three-dimensionality. Working with wool here, it's a really super dense material. It probably almost feels heavy when we look at it. We can see how heavy it is. We can almost feel how soft it is, and how much movement there is because of the coloring, but also because of these different textures of different kinds of wools. And now I would like to look at a very different kind of medium, which is the one of paper, used by Angela Gleikar, who is a German artist, presented by the Jörg Heitsch Gallery of Munich. So also she does large-scale installations, but also smaller pieces, and we can see here an exhibition view with Terforation or terforation, the work that's in the foreground with a hole inside. And this is also really a style that we can see here, that she almost contrasts this like very structural and very clear shape of a sheet of paper, white sheet of paper, with ripping it, with tearing it apart. Very important for that is of course also here playing with light and shadow, so that you can create a certain kind of depth. And also for that she's, as you can see, of course, often layering these sheets. It almost feels like they're floating around in these layers, yet it's like also super clearly structured still, or they are like layered as books would maybe be layered. And in a way, really these works would invite us to contemplate them in many different angles, which of course sadly we cannot do right now, but they really invite to look at all these different kind of textures again, which are being created through this one material of paper, also to move around space, to also probably touch it, even though we couldn't do that, because it also creates this haptic and tactile moment. And again, an element that we find here is almost like this floating or floating vibration, or frozen moment in time. So almost like a sheet could move with the wind or with a breath, or maybe has done, and we kind of see the moment of where it became still again, or where it's being kept still. Another artist of the Jörg Heitsch Gallery that I want to show you here is Moto Waganari, who's also working with lightness and with light in a bit of a different way. He and I'm going to go forward for a moment and then back again, because here we have more of a detail of one of his grid people, so to say, Thinker is the title here, in this thinker's pose that's quite famous, that we all know. So this work actually is being formed, first of all, in a 2D screen space, rendered in a 3D computer program, and then being brought from that into the 3D grid figure, like here, made from stainless steel and polyamide. And then again, he works with natural and artificial light to create this almost like second world or second layer of the shadows, where again we actually have the 2D space. So it's kind of seems to be going back and forth between 2D and 3D, and by that also creates, of course, a certain kind of movement and dialogue between, and almost like split personality we could see here in these figures. I'm gonna go back for a moment so that you can see also here that he uses with the use of light, these people jumping are kind of like, yeah, having another world where the same thing is happening but a little bit in a different way. So again, movement frozen in time and the lightness that we can see here. And what we look at here right now is actually again a view of a virtual exhibition. So also this one was part of a group exhibition actually that the gallery has put on virtually as part of another art fair. So we can really see how that is something that seems to be growing, to have filmed hanging spaces, or to create these 3D moments where you can walk around and choose yourself where to go. So having dealt with stainless steel, for the last piece of today, I would like to look at Antonella Zazzera's work. She's an Italian artist, presented here by the Italian gallery Antonella Catani. And we look here at the piece called Drama from 2019. And again, actually, we have a quite vibrating play with light here. So the light that's being reflected almost gives this feeling of this flickering of this artwork. It also really much reminds me of when you use a lighter or a sparkler at night and move it around really quickly while you take a photo, that you kind of can capture the movement of this light in your hand. And it seems almost to me a little bit like this has been done here with this copper and light coming together. So it's a bit like, yeah, the movement of light itself has been captured. And through that, her work has a very distinct impact on the space that is exhibited in. You would have large-scale sculptures, and you also have these a bit smaller pieces which are almost going back and forth as painting of light and, yeah, being a sculpture itself. And again, we have a very tactile and haptic moment here as well, where you almost want to go closer or touch the material in order to find out how bouncy is it. Do I know what I see here? Do I know how it will react? Do I know how what the depth is of this work? Does it maybe even feel warm or cold? So it, again, really plays with the materiality and our imagination, how it would be like to be closer to it. Yes, so as we have come to an end, I would like to thank you all for your attention and interest. I would like to thank Art Karlsruhe and my team for this tour, and of course also the participating artists and galleries. If you're interested in the materials or also in the courtesies of the images or the media which have been used, the galleries, again, I will show you now here a list of all the artworks that I have shown. So again, you could pause the video, you could have a closer look at that. Yeah, and be aware it's two pages here. And then I wish you all the best, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the Art Karlsruhe digital events.